So I'll let you start and just give a little background and then we'll ask questions. Is that okay?
Yes, yes. First of all, thanks for inviting me to speak to you about the Washington Green Amendment today.
Absolutely.
It's my understanding that you have already received materials generally explaining the basics of the Washington Green Amendment. So I'm going to speak briefly here about the history of the Green Amendment movement, how we've been organizing to ultimately get it passed here in Washington, and where things currently stand.
Good.
After that, I'll try to answer any questions you may have.
Sounds good.
In 2019, Maya Van Rossum founded Green Amendments for the Generations, a 501c3, with the goal of getting green amendments passed in enough states to eventually pass one at the national level. As an attorney and the Delaware Riverkeeper, she had seen how Pennsylvania's Green Amendment, which was passed in 1971, was instrumental in addressing environmental harms that were being allowed or contemplated by government entities. That same year, Representative Lekanoff attended a conference of environmental legislators where Maya presented about green amendments, and Deborah was inspired. So she first introduced the Washington Green Amendment in 2021, where it had a hearing in the House Environment and Energy Committee. She introduced it again with it being heard in 2022. And most recently, it was filed and heard for a third time in the Environment and Energy Committee on January 30th of this year as HJR 4210, on which Representatives Rammel and Pollen were co-sponsors. As we expected, it did not get slated for a vote to pass out of committee for consideration by the full House. Passing the Washington Green Amendment is a long-term project, and it's most likely going to require it being introduced during several legislative sessions. As you may know, passing a constitutional amendment in Washington requires a two-thirds majority of each of our legislative houses, followed by a majority vote of the people. It's a pretty heavy lift. I heard Maya speak about the Green Amendment in December of 22 as part of the Western Washington University Environmental Speakers Series, and I found myself also inspired. So I joined the small Washington Green Amendment team to work on its future passage. In speaking with legislators on both sides of the aisle who were favorably disposed, we consistently heard that in order for them to vote for the Washington Green Amendment, they first needed to hear from their constituents that it's something they want. So being a small group with virtually no financial resources, we devised a strategy for generating the needed grassroots support. That strategy being to build a coalition of supporting organizations whose missions would be strengthened and supported by a Green Amendment. Not only would they be named as supporters, but they would also communicate to their members with education materials and action items we would be creating. Having compiled a list of 150 potential organizations to which we continue to add, we first began reaching out to some of those organizations last October. As of yesterday, 35 have signed on, and we continue to solicit potential supporting organizations. This is proving to be a powerful strategy. With only 4 days' notice that the Washington Green Amendment was scheduled for its recent hearing, we were able to marshal over 700 pro sign-ins to the Environment and Energy Committee. That was more than double those that had signed in favor when it was last heard in 2022. There were also 34 people who signed up to provide favorable live testimony. Kate Lunsford of Snohomish League of Women Voters, whom you may know, is a member of our Green Amendment team. She was recently appointed State Issue Chair Forests. She'd been doing that kind of work with the Snohomish group as well. Prior to her recent appointment, she had reached out through her local chapter requesting the State League become a supporting organization of the Washington Green Amendment. Cynthia Stewart, who is State Issue Chair and a board member, was very excited and supportive of the Washington Green Amendment and submitted the proposal to be a supporting organization to the new president, Mary Coltrane. Mary responded that the League of Women Voters of Washington cannot officially be a Washington Green Amendment supporting organization because we are operating as a subsidiary of a national group. We are not our own 501c3, nor do we have our own board of directors. Kate said that this does not mean that the state league won't support the effort in the legislature. And she was able to provide live testimony in favor of the Washington Green Amendment as a representative of the league at the recent legislative hearing. At the national level, in addition to Pennsylvania, Montana had passed its Green Amendment in 1972. It was recently instrumental in last August's court decision that recognized the standing of the youth plaintiffs and found that the state legislature had violated their constitutional right when it passed legislation to allow fossil fuel projects without an environmental impact statement. New York passed its Green Amendment in 2021 by initiative, and it has already been instrumental in addressing environmental harms. There are currently efforts underway in 19 other states to pass green amendments, with bills introduced this year in Hawaii and New Mexico, in addition to ours. Momentum continues to build, and the Washington Green Amendment team is in this for the long haul. We welcome others who are interested in joining our strategic planning team, and we thank you for your interest in the Washington Green Amendment, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have now.
I'd like to explore the fact that Mary Coltrane decided that we couldn't do it because you're part of a national organization. So is Beyond Plastic. And we were able to be an affiliate of Beyond Plastic, which begs the question of why we were able to and you weren't. I mean,
yeah, this is one of the reasons I wanted to emphasize that in my comments, because I had a feeling that you all have some pull at the state level and that perhaps
well, not
you
necessarily.
didn't agree with this conclusion.
And I know Cynthia really well, and I haven't talked to her about it, but I just thought, and we asked the state, you know, for permission to be an affiliate, and there are several leagues across the nation that are affiliates of Beyond Plastic. So that seems a little like an odd situation to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, this is what Kate had communicated to us. So I'm
I can see that
repeating.
And I've had that problem before because I worked on GPT, the cold thing here. And we had a lot of trouble getting permission to do all sorts of things, and we did them eventually. But it just seems odd that that would have happened.
I agree.
I'll ask.
I would love to hear what you find out about that.
Okay. I don't want him to tell us we can't be part of Beyond Plastic, though.
Well, let's not jeopardize the good work that you're already able to do.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll talk to Cynthia because I know her. I know Mary, but not like I know Cynthia. So okay. All right. Would you just tell us why the Green Amendment would be more important than other avenues we have to explore in this?
Sure, gladly. So there are several reasons why a Green Amendment is necessary. One, while Washington does have some of the greenest laws in the country, there are major gaps that exist. And there are agency interpretations that happen that may be contrary to a healthy and sustainable environment, ultimately. In addition, new harms are introduced all the time that aren't covered under law. And then finally, should the political winds in Washington change, it's much harder, in fact, almost impossible, to overturn a constitutional amendment. But it's a lot easier to overturn laws. To wit, you know, we see the initiative currently to overturn our CCA.
Yeah.
That would not be possible if we had a Green Amendment.
You asked me what is CCA?
Climate Commitment Act,
Oh, thank you.
groundbreaking legislation.
Yeah, which some millionaire's trying to get rid of. Billionaire, excuse me.
Yes.
Hmm. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I was particularly impressed with the fact that the Children's Trust was able to go ahead with their suit in Montana because they had the Green Amendment. And the other times that they've tried to go up, they've always been stopped by the courts. So,
Right. Oregon is an example. There was a
Right.
youth suit that was, the courts found that the youth had no standing to even bring a suit.
Okay.
So do we have any other results like in Pennsylvania, Montana, New York? It just, when I liked the Green Amendment and I thought it was really interesting, but I also had a lot of hesitation on what it's actually going to mean. Is it going to mean just a lot of courts that are now going to hear suits and it's going to be held up forever? Are there ways that they're actually, I need some concrete things of what's been done because of it so that we can share it.
Yes. So
We need,
I cited Montana, for instance.
yeah.
And where
And
does
I
that
encourage
stand
you,
now, Mimi?
pardon me?
Where does that stand now, the Montana case?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
I have not been following it. However, I encourage you to go to the national website forthegenerations.org. There is more information than I can keep in my head about where things have helped,
Okay.
what specific things have gone on. I can talk about in New York State, for instance, there was a landfill that was emitting noxious pollution. And the people who lived downwind of it tried and tried and tried to get the government to enforce its own laws. And never happened. Once New York passed its Green Amendment, they were able to get the government to finally step in and do what they're supposed to. So one of the things you need to understand about what the Green Amendment does and doesn't do, it does not create a right to sue private companies. What it does is it creates a trust obligation on the part of our state government at every level, local government, agencies, bureaus, all the way up to the governor's office. It creates a trust obligation to protect our rights, just like all of the other civil rights that are inalienable and enumerated in Article 1 of our Constitution, our state constitution. So the recourse that it gives citizens is toward government.
A trust obligation.
Did I give you I can't remember if I gave you the national website address. I can put it in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, do that, please.
So
I'll
this
put it
generations,
for
this
the generation,
generations,
forthegenerations.com. I'm going to put it in the chat just so that you
Okay.
have it.
It's .com or .org?
.org, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
and these are the guys who started all this?
The woman who started all of this,
The
and it's
woman, okay.
amazing. Wait a minute, I'm not typing that in properly. It's giving me spaces where it's not supposed to. Wait a minute.
We can find it.
Also, I'm going to put in our website, the Washington, which is a subsidiary of the national website. You could get to it through the national website, but you can get directly to ours. And if you're interested, we hosted a webinar in early January. And a link to that is also available on our website. You can hear Deborah Lakanoff speak as an introductory remarks, and then the featured speaker is Maya Van Rossum, the founder of Green Amendments for the Generations. She right now is supporting the efforts of about 20 states who are at various stages of trying to pass a green amendment.
Are there
And
other states that are
honestly
further
don't know
ahead?
how she does it. She's got her organization. She is her and basically a couple other people voluntarily, not getting paid. The budget's about $500,000, the annual budget. Yeah, I'm just in awe of this woman.
Good for her. We need people like that.
It's very
So are there any other states that are further along in the process of gaining a green amendment?
only I would say that Hawaii and New Mexico are maybe even a little further than us, but I think this is the first time theirs have been introduced.
Okay.
Is this year, but they may have deeper organizations. I can't tell you for sure.
But what's the pushback that you're getting that it's going to take so long to get these through?
Well, one, it's a constitution.
Aside from the fact that the fossil fuel people, I'm sure, are against it, and the rest of those people.
So at the last hearing that we had, this most recent one, there were only 2 people signed up to provide testimony, live testimony. And one was Paul Jewell, who you may be aware of. He's the lobbyist for the counties, the trust beneficiaries, the forest trust beneficiaries. This is, I don't know if he testified in 2021. I did see a recording of his testimony in 2022. His concern, of course, is that means that trust monies, they're not going to be able to log, and trust money. Well, that's all changing anyway, to some degree, as we're seeing DNR finding other sources for funding than, for instance, legacy forests.
Thank God.
And I think there's talk in the legislature of finding other ways of funding these things. That his biggest concern really is the impact it would have on the trusts, the trust recipients. The other person who spoke out, Khan, and I cannot remember who he represented, he felt this was redundant and unnecessary. Maya was able to testify after him and spoke very eloquently to that. And was also able to answer any concerns that the legislators on the other side of the aisle on the committee brought up, thinking they had, they were gotcha questions. But she was able, we never expected to make it out of committee. We were really pleased with the hearing and with the showing that we had of people who signed in pro. Something you may or may not be aware of is that the conservative ladies of Washington showed up big time on the sign-ins with cons, but none of them provided comment or signed up to testify. It's
an
all
organization called the Conservative Ladies of Washington.
Conservative Ladies of Washington.
Oh,
and it's my understanding that they have organized to sign in con on anything related environmentally. We as a group were just discussing in our meeting earlier this morning that we're going to try to somehow reach out to their leadership to discuss how can mothers be against something like this, and I don't think we'll point out to them the irony of their name, conservative, because it's not conserving anything, but
oh dear. Well, we know there are a lot of crazy things going on in the world right now.
Yeah, we're trying to frame this. Well, it's very much an environmental and climate related bill or resolution, as you might have it. We're trying to frame this as a bipartisan effort ultimately, that's about human health and economic prosperity, because we can't have either of those with a degraded environment.
Well, that's good. Do you have any organizations that are conservative that are supporting it?
Not yet. As I
Okay.
mentioned, we have a very small group. We reached out initially to those organizations that we were relatively certain would be favorably disposed, whose missions would be furthered by this. Part of what we'll be discussing in coming weeks as a work group is what strategies do we need to employ to start reaching out to people who are opposed for various reasons, or who aren't aware of how this promotes their interests, such as business groups, chambers of commerce, unions, etc. So
Oh, stop it. Sorry, my cat. Any other questions?
Mimi, I applaud what you're doing. And I'm going to suggest you read a book called Switch. Have you ever heard of that? It's
no,
Switch, and it's making the name of it is Switch, making hard decisions when decisions are hard, or making hard changes. Oh, I got it right here. How to change things when things are hard.
Who's the
And
author?
it's kind of, the author is Chip and Dan Heath. They're brothers.
Hmm.
And they talk about they talk about the rider and the elephant and the path. So the rider is the data, it's what you already know. The elephant is the motivation. And unless you get the motivation right, it's just going to go anywhere, because a rider can't control the elephant, which is the big emotion. And then the final thing is the path. It's got to be such an easy path for us to help you that it's kind of logical. So we
sounds like
need,
that dovetails into exactly what we're trying to do, and that will be a great resource for me. Tell me again the name of the authors.
Chip and Dan Heath, Heath. They also bring out two other things that I think would help us with this amendment. One is to know the highlights. We need to hear stories of what's been done because of it, so that we can tell that story. And so part of this is to find your hot spots and share those. And then the other thing is we all identify with something. And in the state of Washington, to me anyway, we identify with the environment, with the beauty, with protection. And so what's happening in our world is against what we see ourselves. So we need to, like your group needs to help people identify with who they are in the state of Washington and why this amendment fits with who we are versus what's happening in reality. So
We're
anyway,
actually having those discussions, and it was why when we were first reaching out to organizations, we emphasized the fact that this would support and strengthen their missions. We know the message, and also why we're trying to focus on health and economic prosperity, as well as the environmental values that we all hold dear as Washingtonians. So you're spot on. And we have a lot of work in that area to do yet. We're in our infancy to a large degree. This group has not been meeting as a strategic planning group, except we started last January when I joined on. Previously, the Green Amendment was supported by 350 Washington pretty exclusively. And there was not a group of people who were working at this level. I think we have right now 1, 2, 3 members who've been involved since the beginning. And we're hoping now that our 6 is turning into 8. We had 2 new folks join us today as provisional members at this point. We don't know whether they're going to want to continue. I think Bruce Conklin, who is an attorney and former Thurston County, they don't call them councilmen, they call them, can't remember what they call them, but it's effectively was their county council.
Mhm.
He joined us today and he had some great ideas and some thoughts. And Kyle Bickel, who is on the board of Whatcom Million Trees, has joined us. So
Great.
hopefully we're 8 now and growing. As I mentioned in my comments, we are very much open to anyone who's interested in helping to advance this at the planning level and execution level, to let us know.
So maybe I'm on the board of the Salish Current. Have you written an article for them?
Yeah, it's wonderful that so at the recent fundraiser that happened last year, I think I met you there for the
I
first time.
bet we did.
Um, Mike Sato sidled up to me and was like, "So, what do you do?" And I was like, well, I started to do my thing about the Green Amendment. He reached out to me just before we started to have our big push for the hearing, asking if I would write a what do they call it? The guest
Yeah, guess
stay
essay. Yeah.
of 800 words.
Uh-huh.
And I said, yes, I would love to, but it's going to be a little while before I get around to it. So I actually finished it on Sunday.
Great.
It's being reviewed by a couple of our team members. I expect to have comments in by this Sunday, at which point I hope to forward it on to Mike.
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. It's right up their alley, so that's good. And their audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love seeing your comments and the help that you're trying to give me. I mean, it shows how much experience you have as activists. And it's all really helpful to us. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing. I'm always impressed with the passion of people who work on these things. So that's good. Oh, I lost you again. God. My cat keeps walking on my computer. Gosh. Here we go again. Lost it. Anybody else have a question for Mimi? Or comment?
Yeah, Mimi, if you had to guess, how long do you think this is going to take?
That's a great question. When I first got involved, I reached out to Alex Rammel because I knew that he had been a co-sponsor in the past, and we've had chats on other things. And I said, "Hey, Alex," and I have to say, he was great because he was just going into the 2023 legislative session. He was like days away, and he carved out 20 minutes to talk to me about this. And his take is it's going to take 6 or 7 introductions,
Really?
minimally, probably,
Oh,
before it passes. And I try to keep perspective. I'm reading a book right now called The Alternative: How to Build a Just Economy that just came out by Nick Romeo. And in it, he cites the fact that the stop sign, after the stop sign was introduced in the first place, it took a decade for it to become accepted legislatively.
oh Lord.
The opposition, their platform was basically, you're violating our individual rights.
Make you stop.
And that's something that today we think of as, oh my gosh, this is, how could we live without stop signs, right? This is just something we accept as a given. And it's my hope that we'll get there ultimately with, our human right becoming inalienable. So.
Okay. Well, I know there's a sense of urgency with climate that we all think we have to get these things done immediately because things aren't getting any better with the atmosphere, as we all know. So
Right.
that's kind of discouraging to think that we'd have to wait that long. But things could change.
I love the mycelium theory of change.
Yeah.
which is all this work is going on underground, nobody sees it, and then the result is one or two fruiting bodies. They create even more underground activity, which creates more fruiting bodies. Um, and I also want to mention that I had run into Sharon Shoemake shortly after when I was considering joining the Green Amendment movement here in Washington. And I said, so what do you think about it? And she's like, well, I don't know much about constitutional law, but I think any work toward improving our environment and our climate is worthwhile. And all of it makes a difference. So
Absolutely.
whether or not we are getting this passed, we're reaching more people with ideas about this.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you for your work. I appreciate that. And
Well,
I
thank you for
appreciate
your work.
the information. And I will get in touch with Cynthia and talk to her a little bit, and I'll let you know what I find out.
Yeah, I really would love to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. And I look forward to your article in the Salish Current.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything?
Just thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Oh, and
Yes.
thank you for giving me the
Very
time.
helpful.
We really appreciate it.